Hello and welcome to The Register and our coverage of the RSA Conference currently going on in San Francisco. Now, joining me is one of the keynote speakers, Mikko Hyppönen from WithSecure, and who is the Chief Research Officer and has spent more years than most in the security industry. Thank you for joining us, Mikko.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Oh, well, always. I mean, your keynote is basically covering, in 2014, you saw the first case of corporate ransomware actually coming online. We're now 10 years in. It seems to have gone from tiny acorns to a mighty poisoned oak tree, which is hitting absolutely everyone. How has it progressed so fast and why?
It's almost hard to remember anymore, but the very first ransomware incidents which were using Bitcoin were not targeting companies at all. Crypto Locker, Crypto Wall, CTP Logger, Loki, these early ransomware incidents from 2013 and 14, they were targeting home users. They were encrypting your holiday photos and they were asking for €200 or $200 as a ransom, but they were already using Bitcoin. So that's what really started changing the landscape. And very quickly, in 2 or 3 years, the attackers realized that there's much more money to be made by targeting companies. It's harder to breach corporate networks than home computers, especially 10 years ago, home computers were actually very easy targets. But of course, there's much more money to be made by targeting companies. And that's what really started things like these onion ransom sites, double extortion, leak sites, and what I call the growth of the cybercrime unicorns, the largest and most powerful cybercrime gangs in the world.
It's they're bringing in that much money that they're becoming billion-dollar organizations from this.
That's exactly what it means. If you would look at the income figures, if you look at the revenue, if you look at the wealth some of the largest ransomware gangs hold, and you imagine that at these growth rates, they would be private companies, they would be considered to be unicorn startups. Now, cybercrime gangs are never going to do an IPO, so they're not real unicorns. But I think it's a good way of thinking about just how wealthy these gangs have become. And they've become wealthy not just because victims pay the ransom, which of course happens a lot, but also for the fact that they've kept their wealth in cryptocurrencies. A big part of their wealth has been in Bitcoin and Monero and Zcash because it's safe when it's in there. And of course, the valuations have changed so that these gangs have become very wealthy almost automatically. And if there's something which is worse than organized cybercrime gangs, it's wealthy organized cybercrime gangs.
Well, this is it. They've got the money to plow into R&D to get around the new systems as well. I mean, companies are officially, the government advice, at least in the US, is that you really shouldn't pay a ransom. But in fact, everyone, including police departments, does. Now, from the stats that we've seen and that you produce as well, it's looking like government, education, and healthcare are the three big sectors we've just that have come through. We've just seen the United Healthcare case where they've paid out $22 million just to try and get some kind of semblance of activity back in their networks. Why are these particular groups at threat?
It's not necessarily that they are getting targeted more than others. It's probably because they have more vulnerabilities than others. That seems to be the sad case. When you have large bureaucratic organizations with large amount of legacy systems, large IT systems, it's so easy to have vulnerabilities somewhere in there. What I often recommend to CISOs and CIOs and security people that I talk with in different companies or in public sector is simply to take your Tor browser, go to Tor Hidden Service, open up a leak site for a gang, like, Lockbit or Clop or Akira, and just scroll down the list. Just look at the victims, because that's a real eye-opener. Because it totally changes the perception you might have, which is that why would someone target us? We're not that interesting. We're not that visible. Then when you scroll the list of victims, you'll see that it's all kinds of organizations of all possible areas from everywhere on the planet, big, small, enterprise-sized, public sector. The most common way of ending up on that leak site is not that you would be a public sector entity or a healthcare entity. It's simply the fact that there's a vulnerability and the attackers are scanning the whole internet to find all vulnerable systems. It's like someone would have been shooting at the internet with a shotgun, hitting random targets. That's what it looks like. And that's the eye-opener. Then you realize that if these organizations were hit, there's nothing that would prevent me from getting hit.
Interesting. So nobody's actually safe. I mean, as I say, we've been going through this for 10 years now. It doesn't seem like there's a tech fix on the horizon. We all know how big a problem humans are for the layer 8 security problems. Obviously, you're going to be covering the last 10 years. What are your predictions for the next 10 years?
They are grim, unfortunately. This problem isn't getting better. This problem is getting worse. It's highly likely we've only seen the very beginning of this project. As long as victims pay the ransom, there will be more gangs, more individuals. There will be more and more tech-savvy people who want to make money with their skills by joining a cybercrime gang, who want to become an affiliate or a initial access broker for a large gang. Mm-hmm. And the money they are making is so good that this isn't going to change. And every time I speak with victim companies, especially early on during the breach, I think the most common reply I get from the victims is that, we're not going to pay the ransom. We don't want to feed this problem. We know that the more ransoms are paid, the bigger this problem becomes. But then again, after a week, after 2 weeks, some of these companies change their minds when they realize just how hard it is to recover, just how slow it is to recover your backups, even if your backups are intact. And then we have the double extortion problem of leaking confidential secrets. Many companies are ready to take the hit that their patent applications become public, or their price negotiations, or their salaries become public. But then they realize that among the emails which were stolen are private emails of their employees that they are exchanging with corporate health cares, discussing private health issues. All of that would become public as well. And at some stage, they realize that they just can't take the hit. And they do the thing which they shouldn't be doing, which is they pay the ransom.
Right. Okay. Do insurance companies play a role in this in terms of getting companies to making it more likely that companies will pay out?
We've seen different eras in how insurance companies were thinking about this. Nowadays, most insurance companies are not very hot. They might have statements in the fine print out removing the chance they would pay the ransom, which probably is a good thing. We don't want companies to take insurance on the case they can buy ransom and then just pay it off immediately because it's insured. That's only going to make the problem bigger. So the best part about cyber insurance is, from my point of view, is that you cannot get the cyber insurance unless you are at least somewhat mature. You have the basics built into your organization, and that's a good thing in itself.
Got it. Okay. And it's a good time to be in security because you're never going to be out of a job at this rate from the sounds of it.
Like I say, there is job security in cybersecurity.
Got it. Well, thank you very much, and I hope the keynote goes well.
Thank you very much.